Hello, this is Brandon Kaiser. I've chosen to do my ethics assignment on standards-based grading. As you can see in the background here, I've got a bird with some ruffled feathers, and the reason I've chosen that is because a lot of people, teachers, administrators, parents, students, they get ruffled feathers when we talk about standards-based grading. It's a fairly new concept. It's been around for a while. People make tweaks to this concept, but one of the reasons it's so contentious is because our traditional grading system has been around for so long and people get used to it. Uh, they think if it's not broken, don't fix it, even if it is broken. But let's look at the ethics of standards-based grading and how it can be a better model for assessing students today. So the first thing we want to look at is what's actually in a grade. Um, if you go to any school and you have the same subject, you go into two different teachers' rooms, those two teachers most likely have a different way of grading their students. The same goes for two different schools in the same district, so on and so forth. Grades are not really normalized across even two different classrooms. So when we think about this, we think, what's the difference between a 72 and a 74? What do these numbers really represent? What's the difference between these? Standards-based grading takes a look at this, what a grade is, and attempts to take some of these factors out and make it more normalized for each student. So what we've looked at here in relation to ethics is Alabama Educator Code of Ethics Standard number 2. So when we look at that, we can see that unethical conduct by an educator could include falsifying, misrepresenting, omitting, or erroneously reporting information regarding the evaluation of students. So this may seem a little far-fetched when we talk about our traditional grading system being unethical, but one of my sources, Scriffany, argued that some of the students use their compliance and good behavior to hide their lack of understanding of the course material. So basically, if we quote-unquote play school well, we can get a high grade. And likewise, there are some students that have bad behavior, but they get poor grades even though they may know the material very well. So we can look at this from an ethical standpoint. Is it really a true reflection of what a student knows in our traditional grading system? At this point, let's take a look at a video by Rick Wormley. He's somewhat of an expert in standards-based grading.
Well, that's a really interesting question, this idea of zeros on the 100-point scale. Notice it's not just zeros. It's zeros on the 100-point scale. Because zeros on the 4.0 scale, 3.0, check, check, minus, and zero, those are all fine. Because that zero has an equal influence on all the other numbers if you were to mathematically calculate the grade in some massive aggregate. And that's an issue right there we'll get to in just a moment. But this idea of zeros on the 100-point scale is one of the most controversial issues everywhere I go. And it's born out of this idea of using the 100-point scale as a way to measure and report human progress against a goal with great specificity. It was never meant to do that. It's a bit of a corruption to do that. So let's take a look at some of the reasoning behind not doing it step by step. First, consider, it doesn't matter where you set the line for what each letter grade is. Some school districts, an A is 95 to 100, sometimes it's 94, sometimes it's 93, sometimes it's 90, and sometimes it's 80 to 100. A B is 60 to 79, a C is 40 to 59, a D is 20 to 39, and an F is 19 to 0. Well, they're trying to show that's a 4.0 scale with 20 level increments for each one of the 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. Trying to equate 4.0 to 100.0 should teachers need that translation. It's what the community will tolerate. There's not like a set of research data that says an A should be this or a B should be that. Okay, so now the teacher's deciding, I've got this massive F range. Often that's 59 to 0 or 60 to 0 or 65, something like that. Just for the sake of example, we'll say that that's 60 to 0. Okay, so a D would be, the lowest D would be a 51. in that case. Or excuse me, a 61. So now we're thinking, do I give the lowest, most hurtful, and unrecoverable end of the F range, or do I give the most recoverable end of the F range with lots of hope, but nevertheless still an F? We begin to think, do I need degrees or gradations of F-titude? You're a tiny F, you're a large gigantor F. You don't need to do that. Once you're into that F zone, you're in the zone of not there yet, or no evidence of learning. Good reason or bad reason, moral or immoral, it doesn't matter. You have not demonstrated evidence. So in some high schools, there might be no Carnegie unit, no credit given. But whatever it is, good reason or bad, no credit's given. Okay. Well, I have to also teach and grade in such a way as to engender hope. If a kid wants to throw in the ball and go home, I can't teach him because he's divested from my classroom. If a kid gets 1-0, it takes a mammoth pile of perfect 100s just to creep up to the D zone, which falsifies a grade, but also is so overwhelming to most students who are really humans in the morphing that why try? It's just, it's insurmountable to me, and I've got to keep my kids vested. So if I'm trying to decide between a 0 and a 59 or a 60, I'm going to decide on the most hopeful end, but nevertheless an accurate report. This kid has not shown evidence of his learning. An F is an F is an F. I don't need to decide whether it's a gigantic F or a small f because I'm going to respond the same way. Investigate and take corrective action. Now you might be thinking some of those students will brag. Man, I did nothing at all. I blew it off. You all worked so hard. But me, who did nothing, I still got a 60. Yeah. What's that kid really saying? I did nothing at all. You guys worked hard, but I did nothing, and I still failed. Ooh, that doesn't sound so good. The students are the first ones to realize how absurd this all is, and they don't think they're getting something for having done nothing. That's not even close to the truth. All we're doing is mitigating this extraordinary negative impact. Think about this. What if we gave the A the same influence as we give Fs today? 60 to 0? Well, the A is now 60 points. 100 down to 40 is the A range. Well, it'd be actually physically hard to get anything less than straight A's. You would never allow such an outlier of an A to have such a skewing upward influence. You should find it just as absurd to find an F having such a skewing lower influence. We wouldn't do that. If a kid got in the teens, he got a 15 out of 100, an 18 out of 100, and in one glorious moment of clarity, he got a 98. Mathematically, they would skew him up into the passing range, but you would never tolerate that. That's an idea that Doug Reeves talks about in his writings, and it's worth thinking about. Well, consider this. The grading scale in a lot of places is 190, 80, 70, 60. That's a 4.0 scale, 4, 3, 2, 1. A 2.0, well, basic ratios and proportions that third graders understand, that would be an 80. A 70 would be a 1. 60 on a 100-point scale would be about a 0 on a 4.0 scale. Well, people misapply work ethics. They think, all right, it's a 100-point scale we just did. I'm not going to give you a 60. I'm going to give you nothingness, which is a 0. How many levels is a 0 below failure? Well, it's 50, 40, 30, 20, 10, 0. That's 6 levels below failure. It's not failure, it's 6 levels below. That's the exact same thing as saying on a 4.0 scale, child doesn't do anything, there's no evidence of learning. Instead of giving him a 0, which would be legitimate, because he has no evidence, he has no credit for doing or learning anything, well, I'm going to give him a -6. In other words, he has to climb 6 levels up just to get even with absolute failure. This is insanity. But wait, it gets worse. Think about this, and I actually heard this from a school board member in Norfolk, Virginia. Think about this. We do the temperature readings for 5 days in June. Now, in Norfolk, Virginia, it's very hot and humid, and we use Fahrenheit. So those of you who do Celsius, you'd have to make the translations. But basically, if we did like 87 one day, 88 another, 84 another, 85 another, oh, Friday, my bad, I totally forgot to take the temperature. So it's a 0. Well, mathematically calculate that all up, and it's 68.8 degrees. Is 68.8 degrees accurate for the weather in Norfolk, Virginia in a hot week in June? Not even close. And grades have to be accurate. You can't mess this up by having a distorted scale that was never used to report, or meant to be used to report human progress. You're going to have to change the scale so that the 0, the 1, the 2, the 3, and the 4, they have equal influence on all the others. But you know what? This is not a big problem, is it? If we disaggregate. What if I had a kid who did nothing or did less than nothing? He got a 47. He got a 0, whatever it was. So I appointed it as a 60. So he gets 60, 60, 60. And in one, again, glorious moment of clarity, he gets 100. Yeah! And then 60, 60. If you average that all together, he could actually pass. Nothingness, nothingness, no evidence, no evidence, no evidence, lots of evidence, no evidence, no evidence. He could technically pass, but that's only if you average. One of the things we've learned in differentiated classrooms and in standards-based grading is we no longer use mean or averaging. We use central tendency, the most consistent level of performance over time. And it turns out that has a much higher correlation with any kind of testing that will be done on that student outside of your classroom. So if you really want to have integrity in your grades, they mean something, and you don't want to falsify the report of what a kid knows, you'll want to disaggregate. In this standard, there's no evidence. In this standard, there's evidence. That's criterion referenced. And it no longer becomes an issue, zeros on the 100-point scale, if you stop doing the averaging and actually increase the accuracy, the truth, and the usefulness of your letter grades.
Okay, now that we've taken a look at that video, let's continue on and think about how grades are communication. A lot of people think of students earning grades. They did their homework, they earned an A. They did this, they earned this grade. They didn't earn an A, they earned a D because they barely did any of their work. Grades really, though, should be communication. They should just simply communicate what a student knows about the course standards. So in our traditional system, we let a lot of different things become part of the grade that maybe shouldn't be part of that grade. Grades really should just communicate what the student understood, what the student did not understand. So when a report card comes home, a teacher or a parent can look at that report card and say, rather than, oh, they have a 72, look at each standard. Did they meet that standard? Did they not meet that standard? Grades should simply be communication, not a reward for working hard. Okay, so we've talked about different classrooms. Teachers are different. Okay, one teacher, you may go into their classroom and a student would earn a B because of what they have done in that classroom. Now, if that same student went into another teacher's classroom for the same subject, they may earn a C for that same work, knowing the exact same things. So we see that teachers vary in how they grade things. So that's why standards-based grading come in and be an ethical model for this, because it takes all the guesswork out of the grading. So instead of a student getting a B because the homework bumped their grades up, standards-based grading looks at a rubric and says they met this standard, they did not meet this standard. So it really kind of levels the playing field there. So with leveling the playing field, we think of the privileged, the underprivileged students. Students that may not have two parents at home or may not have any parents at home sometimes. A parent may be single parent home, the parent may be working at night. They don't have the help that they need with their homework. With standards-based grading, there's no bonus points for bringing in Kleenex or dry erase markers. It's simply, do you know the standards or do you not know the standards? And when we break it down this way, we level the playing field for all students, because even if they are a behavior problem, which tends to be some of those students that don't have a great home life, they can still pass because the playing field has been leveled by the rubrics. Okay, this also gives students hope. You saw in the video, if a student gets a 0, that can really set them down and put them in a hole that they have to dig their way out of. With standards-based grading, once a student masters an objective, they've mastered it. they can make up their homework, do whatever they need to do to master that objective. I believe this way gives our students hope, and that's what we're charged to do as educators. And here are some of our references. I hope that you've seen how standards-based grading can be an ethical model for grading today.